got it. There we go. Thank you for keeping me on track there. I appreciate it. We do have the chat window open, and so in the chat window, you can talk to everyone. You can talk among yourselves, or you can send questions to me. So you can either put them in there for everyone to see or send them personally to me, and I'll try to keep an eye on that. And what we're going to do first is we're going to start out with having our panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to stop sharing. There you go. All right, so who should we start? On my screen, Sibbie, you're first. So if you want to start out, sorry. Just introduce yourself and give us the little spiel about who you are and your background and challenges with HF.
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Sibbie Priestly. I currently am a UX researcher at End-to-End User Research in Houston, Texas. My background is actually, I started off at Texas Tech University with my undergraduate in psychology, and then I got my master's at the University of Houston Clear Lake in human factors. And so I really just started my freshman year. I had a mentor actually kind of come up to me. She was a PhD student, and she really took hold of my work that I was currently doing, and she just really thought I would be a good fit for her lab. And so she just kind of took me under her wing, and I ended up growing with HF, and I learned to love everything about it. It's so unique, and there's so many different fields and so many different individuals, and I just knew this is where I wanted to go. And then from there, I just took off. I went to graduate school. I did a lot of VR work there, and I did a bunch of labs. And then from there, I got my internship at End-to-End and received a full-time offer. And so that's currently what I do. And so we focus on usability research for clients of really any and all different backgrounds. So we can do some medical tech, we do law work, we also do a lot with just general technology as a whole. And so it's been a really great experience and a lot of skills underneath my tool belt. So thankful for the opportunity of everything and getting to meet all of y'all. So hi.
Thank you, Sibbie. Hey, Na, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Na Du, and I'm currently an assistant professor in the University of Pittsburgh. I got my bachelor degree in psychology in Zhejiang University, and then I started my PhD in industrial operations engineering in University of Michigan. And for how I get started to learn the human factors and the ergonomics, so I started with the psychology, and I feel that I'm pretty interested in cognitive psychology and neuroscience. No, I should say that I'm interested in cognitive neuroscience and engineering psychology. Yeah, so I in my undergraduate, I did some like usability studies and also use the eye tracking and EEG to study the neural activities of the human behavior. And almost in my senior year, I decided I will go for PhD with on the engineering psychology or human factors rather than the pure cognitive fundamental psychology. And then I started my PhD in human factors. And I think when I started my PhD, I already almost determined I will go the academia rather than the industrial. So I did internship in Honda Research Institute. So it's for me to have more networking with those researchers in the industrial. And then I'm on the academia job market last year, and I'm very lucky to directly land on an academia position right after the PhD. Yeah, so this is my story. Thank you.
Thanks, that's very interesting. Okay, Missie, would you like to give your introduction?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Missie Smith, and all of my degrees are in industrial and systems engineering. And so there's three kind of main research areas within ISE. There's manufacturing, supply chain, and human factors. And so basically what I did during undergrad was rule out things I didn't like. So I knew I liked human factors. Actually, I started researching with the professor really early because my older sister, who tells me, I always hope she'll be wrong. And she always tells me what I should do. And she's always right. And so she was like, Missy, you should work with this professor. And I was like, okay, you said I should, so I will. And I ended up working with that professor for 5 years. And so I conducted research in more of the physical side of HFE. So doing a lot of like comfort and fatigue work throughout undergrad and my master's. And at that time, I wasn't having like creative ideas in the space. And so I was really worried about a PhD. And so I was like, well, maybe at that point, I actually hadn't tried out supply chain. So I was like, well, maybe I don't love human factors. I know I hate manufacturing. So let's try supply chain. And so I went and I worked in supply chain for a paper company for a year. And I was like, oh, I do not like supply chain. So I just kind of ruled everything out. And so then a lot of the ideas I was having and the things I wanted to do at work were really all about like the user interfaces of the stuff that I used as a supply chain employee in this company. So then I went for my PhD at Virginia Tech. And I started working on augmented reality in cars and trying to basically understand the implications of using this kind of new technology and how it changed our behavior and what are the implications of that for designing the technology, designing our interactions with the technology. And when I started, I guess another thing I should say is I think if I had known about UX as an undergrad, I probably would have tried to go that path, but I didn't know it existed. And so when I started my PhD, it was like the only career that I saw that I knew I wanted was academia. And so I went in with the goal of like, I will become a professor and that is going to be my life. And so that was kind of my goal. But in grad school, I did do an internship at Ford, which like a big reason that I did that internship was just because I was like, I really need money. So there were some practical kind of considerations in addition to like, yes, it was great experience, but also that was a big part of my decision to intern when I did. So I tried to kind of explore different things and explore different research and figure out what was really exciting to me. And then I was able to also get an academic position at Oakland University, which is in Michigan, not California. It's Oakland County, Michigan. But so I was a professor there for 2 years. And basically, I kind of had this moment of like, I want to do research that I know I can't do. And I realistically don't think I will ever have the resourcing in academia to do it. And so it really led me to kind of think about like, is it truly academia that I wanted? Or are there just characteristics that are really common in academia that I really like? And so, so some of my decision making came to, I really liked mentoring and advising students, and I really liked doing good research and kind of being surprised by things that we learn about people. And so it's like, to me, when I first started a PhD, I didn't think that that could exist outside of academia. But then once I had been in academia for a couple of years and I started considering other jobs in industry, I realized that I actually could have some of those things that I thought were only academic. And so, so that kind of helped lead to me switching jobs just because I wanted to do some really specific research, but it's super multidisciplinary and I don't have all the skills. I can't do it myself. It's also really expensive because we're creating a technology that doesn't exist while also trying to figure out how to use the technology. And so that was kind of a lot of the considerations that I had. And so I ultimately got a job first as a UX researcher at Meta, formerly, Reality Labs Research, formerly Facebook Reality Labs Research, which is kind of a subset of Facebook Reality Labs, which is a subset of Facebook. Now it's a subset of just Meta. But basically now I'm able to work in the space that I'm excited about, but I have a lot more resources to do it. And so, so yeah, it's been kind of a journey and I've had to make a lot of decisions, but I've always just kind of tried to remind myself what I tell other people when they're like starting a new job or trying to make a decision, which is that like, you don't have to do the same thing forever. So the first job out of undergrad, it feels like a huge commitment but you can change. Like, it doesn't have to stay forever. And it's hard when that's you. So even as I was like making those decisions, and I was like, I know I've told people this, but it doesn't feel the same when you're going through it. So yeah, now I'm a research scientist. So I even had like a role transition within Meta that kind of had some similar decision points, but ultimately I'm really excited about where I am and happy to kind of talk through it more.
That's amazing. You went through a lot of decision points and transitions and self-reflection, which is really great. And I understand what you mean about giving the advice and then having to follow the advice, right? Always a tricky situation.
Not fun.
Okay, Jingkun, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Jingkun Wang. Currently, I'm a first-year PhD student at Purdue University. I'm also in industrial engineering, and for my background, I got my bachelor's degree at Texas A&M University, and also in industrial and system engineering. So So for how I got into human factors and ergonomics, actually before I came to Texas, I was at Sichuan University in China. And I got into a class which is called Introduction to Human Factors and Ergonomics. Back then, the professor, I think his research is on active exoskeleton. So he kind of showed us the video on how the cool stuff they do and how they help disabled patients to stand up again. I was like, that's amazing. I want to explore more for sure. And so after transfer to Texas, I was interested in the field. And then so I kind of looking for research opportunities. So I got involved in Dr. Messa's lab or the neuroergonomics lab and start my research there. I indeed learned a lot, especially in human-robot interaction field and also the human exoskeleton interaction field. But the thing is we do passive exoskeleton itself, instead of active exoskeleton, but still I learned a lot. And after studying there for 2 years, I was like, I'm interested in it for sure. So I decided to go ahead and pursue a PhD degree. Yeah, that's my story. I guess I'm kind of hesitating between going to academia or industry. So I guess Dr. Missie's story kind of helped me to see the transition and stuff. Yeah.
So right now you're still deciding which direction to go?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I imagine there's a lot of other people probably here who are going through the same kind of decision. So that's great to have you. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to Sibbie again, and I'm going to ask, can you talk a little bit about support groups, resources, people, things that helped you along your path?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, how I first got started in my undergrad was I had a really great PhD student who really she opened up a huge door for me when it came to human factors. And so I guess my one piece of advice is make sure that when you are building professional relationships with anybody, this can be individuals in your cohort, this can be individuals that are in the same degree plan as you, your professors, colleagues when you're working with them, they really help branch. And that's really my journey. After graduate school, I became very close with my cohort, and I feel everybody thinks differently. And as you can see, even with the panelists, we're all in the same field and we are all doing something completely different. So there's just a wide range of things that you can do. And somebody will think of something that's different than yours, but it will all somehow intertwine. And I think that's something that resonates, especially when you're doing networking events and trying to figure out what you want to do. Talking to your colleagues, figuring out with your cohort members what's going on. They might find something, especially job related, that you didn't even know was open. So really talking with them helped out, especially when searching for jobs and searching for internship opportunities, and even just collaborating when it comes to labs and research, because I'm not the best coder, but I have individuals in my cohort that were. And so you always have those types of situations where you're going to need somebody's help. And then I had a really great professor when I was in my graduate studies who literally just let me do whatever I wanted when it came to research. And any passion I had, he was like, all right, let's figure out how to do it and we'll go with it. And it was VR all the way. And he really helped me figure out what to do and how to make a career out of this. And then would also helped me branch out and to see what I liked. I liked medical. I liked, doing aviation. It was just, UX research. I was all over the place. And he went and he helped me with every single thing. He would throw me articles left and right. He would help me network. And so that first step of having individuals in your cohort and then also having your professors will open up this door for a networking that you didn't even know, because your professor will start handing you individuals. For me, mine was Christy. And I really got to know Christy, who opened up a door to many, many opportunities and many more individuals in the same field with just a little bit different of a background. And then finally, my last piece is I ended up having a mentor when I went into my internship. So I really recommend, once you find where you're going, if that's your PhD, if you're going into your master's, into an internship, or even when you go into your first job, to really build these professional relationships with your colleagues as well. And so you can develop this sense of a friendship to where you can ask for help, you can ask for mentorship, and then you get to receive a lot more skill sets that you didn't think would happen in school as well. And they'll just help you build and build. And again, another door will open and more opportunities to continue to grow. So that is my advice when it comes to my support group. And I'd be happy to answer any questions later.
That's great. All right, so Na, do you want to answer the same with the support groups, people and resources that have made a difference for you?
Yeah, I think some of them are similar to Sibbie. So for the closest support is my lab mates and the cohort in the same program, no matter it's in the undergraduate or the PhD studies. And because those people, you may have the same, you are in the same generation, then you are studying the same courses, you are doing similar research, and sometimes your skill set can compensate to each other. And being with them, so even though you do not really discuss about the real knowledge, you will feel that you are supporting each other. So our lab, so we always have a very unusual schedule. We will work very late at night, and in the daytime there's nobody in the room, but we find that working together and we can help us improve our efficiency. And we were always together for lots of deadlines. And at the same time, the students in the same program, like your cohort, and we may have different student chapter, so human factors and ergonomics student chapters, and those kind of student group can also support us. So for the mentor side, so I think I have lots of mentors, either at university levels or at the community levels. So for the university, so of course I have my advisor, and I have lots of collaborators, and they are from different disciplines, like they're from information science, they're from mechanical engineering, transportation institute, and they can provide me different aspects of the suggestions. And I feel that during my job search, so because I have weekly meetings with them on my dissertation or the research projects, so I will also update my job seeking process with them. And because they are very supportive, so they will answer my questions and give me very invaluable suggestions when I don't know what to do. Yeah, meanwhile, I think I also receive lots of support from the human factors economics women group. So last year I was on the jobs market, and I attended those weekly coffee chat, and I received lots of suggestions. And also I talked with Missie when I tried to interview with Auckland University, and I also talked with Alan Bass, so he organized several seminars on the academia and job search, and she helped me revise my CV, give me some feedback. And there are lots of other mentors. They helped me either during the annual meeting or offline or by emails. There are too many to list, but I did receive lots of help from them, even though we may only met in person once before, or even I haven't met them in person, but as long as I send them an email saying, oh, I have some questions, can we have a chat, and they are very happy to help me. Yeah, so this is like at the community level. And at the industrial level, because I also did an internship at the Honda Research Institute. So my supervisor there also helped me a lot. And I did the internship when I was on the academia job search. So I did a part-time internship there, and at the meantime, I'm seeking my academia job position. And I think they also gave me some advice. And now we were writing a paper, and I think there are potential collaborations in the future. And after the internship, they can be the collaborator, they can be the friends, they can you can be the co-workers, like colleagues, I mean. So those are from the industrial level. And the last but not least, I think the support is from the family, from the roommate, and from the consulting, the psychological groups support. I mean, like I think when I was on the job market, I was not that nervous, but when I was almost at the end of the job market, I was waiting for those results, and I have nothing to do because I have finished all the interviews. And I feel that, oh, where would I end for after this job market search? And then I talked with the psychological groups, and they give me some advice to help me like deviate my attention from this kind of result waiting and focus on my dissertation. And I think there are lots of those kind of psychological consulting groups, so don't be afraid to ask for help if you need. Yeah, that's all.
Well, thank you. I think that's such a good point. You reached out. It seems like you reached out to many different avenues, and you haven't felt much resistance in asking for help. And I think that's one thing that people don't know, that it's okay to reach out, because most people are willing to help. You get more yeses than you get nos when you reach out to people and ask for their advice or mentorship. Okay, Missy, did you want to address the same question? It was about your support groups, people, and resources.
Yeah, I've been reflecting on this because I am gonna give a talk, and I was thinking, you know, oh, I want to thank everyone that helped me from this one place, and it was like, wow, that would be really hard because that's a lot of people, and so I think for any person along the way, like, you need support from people, you know, what is it, the saying, like, no man is an island, right? No woman is either. And I think that I have achieved the things that I wanted to achieve because of the people that supported me. And so I just second, like, there's so many different people, but one of the ways that I think is really helpful to think about it is I actually heard a talk at HFES at the HFE Woman Lunch in 2019, which is ironic, not only because this is that same group, but also because the person that gave the talk is now my boss. And it was something totally new. So Deb Bain Davis gave a talk about coaches, mentors, sponsors, and advocates. And I think we hear a lot about mentorship, and we hear a lot about, like, you know, mentors as support groups. But I never heard this like breakdown of different things. And at first I was like, oh, that's silly. Why are we like trying to like break these things apart? But then as I've like thought about it more, and like, I did really enjoy it as she kind of got into the details of how different people bring different things. And so I think, like, for example, you know, my sister has been a coach, and she has helped me through a lot of different things just by talking through it. And that is priceless. I can't replace that. I can't, I need that. And so she's somebody that's been really impactful because she has coached me through things and been there to support me. And then I have that faculty that I worked with at Mississippi State. Carrie Babsky-Reeves has just been a mentor. Like, she has been there to tell me about her experience and to help me figure out kind of where to go. And she's helped me in a different way. So she and my sister both are two really big parts of my support, but they've helped me in completely different ways. And then an advocate is someone that like speaks for you in the rooms where you're not. And so that's the person that like, you're not in the meeting and they say, Missy did a great job. We should consider Missy for this. And so I've had numerous advocates that have kind of put my work or put my name out there when I couldn't have done it because I wasn't invited to the room. And then I'm trying to remember. Yeah. And sponsors are people that like open doors for you and they introduce you to people and they help you network and they help you find new things. And I've had a ton of sponsors as well. So I wouldn't be repetitive because I've had, similar experiences and similar people that have been really impactful. I think it's really helpful to think about it in the sense that like, not only is there this whole community of support, but it's different kinds of support and you need all those kinds of support. So if you only have people that are coaching you, you don't get that advocacy, you don't get that sponsorship necessarily. And those things are important as well. And also just in kind of setting those expectations of like the people that do support you, they can't be all of those things. And that's okay because no one should have to be, but also it's okay if you get like kind of one type of value from a mentor. So anyways, I just thought that was a really interesting way of breaking it down because I had never until 2 years ago heard that distinction. And I think it's really shaped the way I view my relationship with others and then also others' relationships with me.
That's great. I've heard of mentors and sponsorships, sponsors, but I've never really thought of the idea of the advocate, right? So that is really important to have somebody advocate for you when you're not available. I love that breakdown. So Jingkun, is this resonating with you? Do you have a similar story about your support groups and people and resources?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of agree with Dr. Missie says, like different people can provide different aspect or value and all of them are important. So at first, I think I'm really sensitive and like a sensitive person. So I really need friends' help or mentors' help, to kind of make me make my emotions stable, if that makes sense. Yeah, all the time. So I really appreciate them. So, and I'm kind of lacking confidence. So I'm so glad there are always people who tell me you're the great, you're the best. Yeah. So that's nice. It's just nice to hear that. And yeah, I kind of gain confidence from them. Yeah. Another thing I want to share actually is the way I pursue my PhD. So before actually the reason why I pursue a PhD kind of because I went for a career fair and by talking to several interviewer, they kind of say you're qualified to go ahead. So before that, I don't think even I'm qualified to pursue PhD directly, but by talking to them and also they follow up with me. So I was like, okay, probably I am qualified. So yeah, I think that's another way to gain confidence. Yeah, and yeah, that's my story.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a few of you have had, not all of you, but a few of you have had sort of this back and forth between academic and industry. So how do you think one impacts the other? So I know we have a question that would, I guess, be to Na and Missy about how the industry impacted your academic or academic impacted your industry choices. Whoever, Missy, Na, who wants to go first?
I think we're staring at each other's pictures to see who will speak first. So I'll jump in and then Na, you can start talking when you're done hearing from me. So yeah, I think going for a PhD, I really most of the time felt like I was kind of presented one path of becoming a professor. And I think one thing that's a realistic challenge is there's not enough jobs for the number of PhDs that graduate. And so that's one thing where if you were considering a PhD, it may not be an option simply because of the numbers. Like you may be excellent and there may be, you know, there's probably 20 excellent people for every role. And so that's just I guess something to keep in mind. But I tried to, so I was really dead set on academia though. And I think the thing that led to me kind of questioning that and changing my mind was that like I had made assumptions about industry without really experiencing them. So I had interned and I had kind of one internship experience, but that wasn't really reflective of all the work that I could do in industry. Because you can't experience everything. There's like such a diversity of experiences. But when I started to really break it apart into the components of the job that got me excited, that's where I was able to kind of separate the work from like the characteristics or the title, I guess, from the characteristics of the work that I wanted. And that's where I started to realize that like industry had some things that also really worked well for me. And including like a little more flexibility in where I lived, because that was something like I had to make that choice of, you know, do I want to live in a place that I'm not excited about and force my family to do that as well? Or do I want, like, am I willing to sacrifice this career path that like I've thought about and dreamt about and been excited about, but it's going to force us to make decisions that we don't want to. So like, I think that's kind of one decision point for me. But also just really taking the time to, you know, think about not the title that you want, but the qualities of the job that you want. Because I started to realize that the qualities of the job that I want, I can do anywhere. I could do it in academia and I could do it in industry. So it wasn't really the like specific title that mattered as much. It was just that I needed to be really selective about the job and industry that I took. And so that's where I realized I love research. I want to do research. I want to do cutting edge research. So I don't want to sacrifice on the research that I'm doing. And so that means that I have a limited place, you know, a limited pool of places I could go in industry. I want to mentor people, and, you know, that's built into being a professor. You don't even have a choice. Like you have to. And I was like, well, that's great for me. And so now in industry, I have to seek that out. But what I found is that I can, and it's easy actually. And now I'm mentoring more people than I was as a professor because I'm seeking it out, and I'm working sometimes with people that like may be a better fit for me because it's optional. So we don't have to have that relationship. So I think just like for me, that back and forth is important. And it's also important to really try to explore and think about like the qualities of the job and the qualities of life and the choices that you'd have to make for all of those roles. And then like, really, what are your priorities and your non-negotiables? Is it that you want this particular title, or is it that you want to live in a particular location, or is it kind of a balance between the two? And I think that to me was really helpful in kind of making decisions about when I wanted to pivot rather than, because I never had to, but it was like, but maybe I want to. And, but also I will say, like, just straight up front, it was terrifying. And it was a full year before I was like, I think that was the right choice. So in those moments of pivoting, like, it's scary, and don't let anyone tell you that it's an easy choice. But now I feel like it was the right choice for me.
Well, that's great to hear. It sounds like you really thought it through, and you were able to find things in both industry and in academia that resonated with you, primarily the mentoring and research. So I think that really worked for you. And so how did that work for you, being in industry and taking that experience back to academia?
Actually, for me, I think some of my thoughts are similar to Missie, because I think when I started to pursue a PhD, my original thought is to go academia. So I'm not really active. I was not really actively seeking for an internship in the industrial. That's just because my lab mates and my cohort, they were interviewing the Honda Research Institute, and they said that you may also be a good fit for this position. So I just sent them the CV, and I got an interview, and then they said you can come. And I think this is one thing I would like to mention here. is do not limit yourself. I now when I go back to see my previous footsteps, I feel that it is very good to do an industrial internship during the PhD, no matter you want to do the academia or industrial later. So lots of people, they may say that if you want to go to academia, you do not need to do the internship in industrial, because what they really care about is your papers, your network, your presentations, those kind of things. And but now I would say that if you do because there are also lots of research positions in the industrials, where if you do it, you will have lots of benefits. So one thing is you can look at how the research is being conducted in the industrial. So they have more money, they have more effort, they have more resources, and the scale of the research they are doing may somehow be different from the universities. And also different company, they have their different focus. And you are going to know different peoples, and those people, lots of them, if you are doing a research company like a reality lab, those people are very senior. And I also interviewed or gave a talk in the reality lab, and I talked with those research scientists, and I feel that they were really amazing, because before that I thought only those professors, especially those very well-known senior professors, they are very knowledgeable. But when I talk to those research scientists, I feel that they're doing very cutting edge work, and they're mentoring the internships, and they are doing the same thing, but just in different locations. So this is one of the possibilities. So I would recommend for the people, even though you have made a decision that you would like to go academia, you can still looking for an internship, but maybe a research internship or a government position, because lots of our work are also related to the governance. So you can work in FDA, you can work in NIOSH to know how those government agencies are doing human factors research. I think those experience will benefit you a lot. And for now, so I'm now in my first semester, and I'm an assistant professor. And even now, I feel that sometimes I feel I'm doing the best job in the world, and sometimes I'm asking myself, why do I select academia? Why do I need to do this? What I'm looking for, what is really I want. But overall, I'm thinking that I'm still very satisfied with my positions. And I think no matter when you are no matter how old you are, and no matter whether you are in academia or in industrial now, it's never too late for you to transit to your career, as long as you have made a decision, and then you go for it.
Yeah, I think it's great for a professor to have had the experience in industry, because then you can relate to your students who are going into academia and your students who are interested in going into industry as well. So Sibbie, we have a question about what would you recommend for people who just want to get straight into industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of my path. I went straight into industry. And so I would say the first thing is really make sure that resume is crisp and clean and ready to go. Talk with professors, make sure that whatever you have lab-based is really put forward, and that way it can be tweaked to where it can be an industry-based focus. And so that way you can make sure that not only does it make it seem like you know what you're doing when it comes to research, but also how you can implement that when it comes to industry. And then take a step back, submit a few resumes, and then come back 2 weeks later, and I guarantee you will have missed something. I guarantee it'll be something, and it'll be like, oh, I should have said this better. This is how we're going to say it. And so you can type it back out. You can always benefit from going back and editing and making a few tweaks. And then one thing that it took me a while is, especially with things like this, is to really branch out when it comes to networking events, and get that practice of your 3-minute pitch of yourself, of what you've done in your past and what your skill sets are. Because when you're giving into an interview, they already have your resume, and that's not what's shining. You know, you've already made it past that small portion and they know your resume. That's already spoken volumes. So now it's time for the team to know you and how you would fit into all these dynamic fields, or what team you would focus best with. You know, do you see more of, you know, are you more in the box and you're going to get all the stats down correct? Or are you going to be thinking outside the box and be more on the creative team? You know, giving yourself that personality check so they know where to put you is also something really great when interviews come. And great practices, especially in places like this, small get-togethers and networking. And one of the biggest questions that people ask you is, what is human factors to you? So get that elevator pitch of 1 to 2 minutes down. For sure, that's what I would say is the best advice when especially coming into industry.
Okay. So Jingkun, they were asking, what are you considering now that you're thinking about industry versus academia? What things are coming to mind for you?
I think like I personally prefer academia because I indeed like gain lots of help from my high school and university professors. Like I kind of like also mentoring other students, like how they mentored me. So that's the reason why I prefer like academia more. But because I have never like go into any internship before, so I feel like I want to try, you know, like later to see whether I like that field or not, and then decide.
Okay, great. So, I had a follow-up for Sibbie. Sorry about that. Real quick, did you feel like the resume workshops were helpful to you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did a lot through HFES, especially when the conferences were happening, and you really get I would have to say, whenever those are available and possible, to really take hold of those, because there's, like I said, HFE is everywhere. Everybody has a different form of industry, and there's things that maybe one side of the field wants more than others. And going to these workshops and really figuring out, okay, they're in aviation, that's what I would like to do. That's how you will figure out your lingo and figure out where to go and how to really make your resume shine, and where users and where these individuals will be looking at. That'll really help you develop this best resume. And then when it comes into the interview process, you can really expand on what you've focused on if it comes to aviation, if it's medical, and getting those workshops really gives you an idea of others' processes when it comes to these when it comes to these interviews, because you'll have interviews where I've been in a few where it's 2 interviews and you're done. I've been on 5 with an exam in the middle and being on a panel of 5 to 7 individuals. So you can have a wide range. And really, I think one of the best experiences I've had was actually a rejection letter. But I was going through the process, I'm halfway through, and I received that generic, like, sorry, you didn't make it. But the really cool thing was, even though I didn't get it, I got an immediate phone call from the team, who called me and said, hey, we gave the generic, but we just wanted to give you an own personal phone call saying, we really enjoyed you. It just wasn't a best fit, but you were really great. Keep working. They found me on LinkedIn. We became a connection, and sometimes they would throw me jobs and do so many things. So it's really cool that even though that certain member and that certain company did not want me, it was just the job description. It wasn't necessarily me. And so I think that's something that, especially when you're pushing and you're trying to find those jobs and you're perfecting your resume, it can really be a downer when that job that you get just doesn't want you. But really push yourself to show your personality and show your traits and show your skill sets through your resume and throughout all of these interviews. And one will stick, and it'll be the best decision you've ever made. And sometimes it'll be a little question of, am I doing this? Was this the right degree? I don't know. You'll do it, it'll happen. But again, like we said, we have the support system. So you're gonna sit there, you might cry a little bit, you might just get up on your feet and decide you've got it. But you'll get there. And I feel like the workshops are a great way to not only boost your resume, but also to see those experiences and see what questions might be asked or what helped them get the job and land that position. And especially if it's in the field that you want, go ahead, yeah, write those notes and try and make it work for you.
Thanks, Sibbie. Missy, we have a question for you. Would it have been a more difficult transition if you had gone more into a UX research versus research scientist?
So I was hired as a UX researcher and then transitioned to be a research scientist. And I think that those roles, I guess one thing I would say is that like there were things I didn't expect. So like one thing was I had no idea how people defined UX researcher. I did not know there was a difference between roles. And so, and I suspect, and I'm not positive about this, but I suspect that the definition of a UX researcher actually may even change company to company. And so, so within Facebook, it is a little more challenging to shift from a UX research to a research scientist role. I do know people, so I did that shift. I do know people that have done the opposite. And so I guess one thing I would say is like, and I am an example of what not to do. I never research the companies as much as I should, nor do I research the roles. I mean, I read the job postings, but I think I was at a real disadvantage for not knowing that difference and not knowing how it would change my work, because I just assumed that like my assumptions were right. And so I guess I would say from that perspective, definitely like try to do your research and ask people. I just didn't know that I needed to. And I didn't know who to ask. But I guess now's a good time to throw in the fact that like I've had luck with people with reaching out to people on LinkedIn. And also like I'm receptive to talking to people from LinkedIn. But I guess I would recommend if you're going to reach out to someone, make sure it's really like clear what you're asking for and also like why you're reaching out to them. So it's like of all the people in the world, why that person? And if you don't have a reason for reaching out to them, that like maybe that's a signal that that's the wrong person or that you shouldn't be reaching out to them. But when I, reach out to someone with like a really specific, hey, I'm reaching out to you because of this, and I'm curious about that, like people respond. And so just, I guess I would say like, I'd encourage you to do your research, unlike me, but then also like, you don't only have to leverage the network that you have. You can use LinkedIn to build your network, but you need to be thoughtful on how you do that. And so, so like messages that are like, hey, I'd like to have you in my network. Those are not great messages because it doesn't give an idea of why you want them in the network or why you want to talk to that person. And so that is totally like away from the question that was asked. Okay. But also I think it's like helpful information that like people will probably respond to you on LinkedIn, but you want to be thoughtful in how you do it, just like any communication with people. And so I think that's all that I have to say about that. But yeah, I'll stop there.
That's fine. That's great. So for now that you are a mentor yourself as an assistant professor, do you still feel like you need and value mentorship?
Yes, I think mentorship is very important. And so I did receive the mentorship from the department level, at least these days. So so I request, and my chair assigned me 3 faculties to be my mentors, and they're from different disciplines. So like information science people or come from different areas like networks, natural language processing, human factors, human computer interaction, and like telecommunication. Yeah, so they are from different domains, and they can provide me different types of suggestions. So some senior faculties, they may know the systems very well. I mean, the tenure track position systems. So they will tell me the roughly requirements about the tenure, whether you will get tenured. And some faculties, they're in the close areas as me, and then they will recommend some grant programs that I can submit the proposal to. And I also, so those are for the mentorship side. And meanwhile, I also get support from my colleagues. So our junior faculties. So because our schools, so we recruited several new faculties in the past 2 or 3 years. So I think in this semester, we get like 3 or 4 get-togethers for the junior faculties. And we will, we went outside for beer, for coffee, for lunch, and or for barbecue in someone's house. And we complain to each other. We share the experience and shared the concerns, and some of them may be 1 or 2 years before me, so they came maybe in 2019 and 2020, and then they shared their experience. And we also talk about the lives, like house purchase, family support, and yeah, this kind of things. So I think in addition to the mentorship from the senior peoples, we also get lots of support from our colleagues who are in the same situation as us.
Okay, thanks. So this is for everybody, I guess. So as you have made all these transitions, some of you have come into human factors, some of you have gone to industry or gone to academia or started your first job. What has been your biggest surprise? And I'll let anybody, anybody can start.
I can go.
Oh, go Sibbie.
I'll do either, it's fine. One thing about, sorry, back to my original question about the different types of industry and things. I want to say that LinkedIn was really great for UX research, but Glassdoor and Indeed was actually better for human factors based jobs. Fun fact for anybody who cared about that. Most surprise, one, that was a really big surprise for me, because I was very much so LinkedIn all the way. I'm searching for jobs, I'm doing this left and right, and it kind of switched. I decided to try Glassdoor, I did Indeed, and I was happily surprised to find a lot more of the human factors based information and less of the UX research roles as well. So that's always something that I found surprising. But I think for me, one of the biggest ones was getting to meet individuals in a field that is very, not as rare as we would have thought, but how you can change positions and you can change a little bit when it comes to what you do and what your focus is. And I think that's been the most surprising. I thought, once you are stuck somewhere, you're stuck, and there's no way you can grow, and there's no way you can transfer. And I found that, especially getting more into different groups and different fields, I'm still being able to, I have a full-time, I'm in a position in industry, but I am still doing research on the side that I want to do. And this is collaborating with, my professor that I had in undergrad or in graduate schools and things like that. And I think that's really something different that I don't feel like everybody in different fields get to have. And I think that's something that we should all utilize and take hold of if you can.
Yeah, I know people have told me before when they try to make the switch, like they're in, I don't know, aviation, and they decide they want to go into medicine. And sometimes it's a little bit of a hard sell, but really the human factors skills that you have apply. Even though it's in a different domain, you can switch to another industry. It's just a matter of convincing the people that are hiring that you can do that.
Absolutely. And especially when it comes into industry and all those bases, it's more about your skill set and what you've learned. And so once you get into that first job, learn anything and everything that you can. Even if you don't think it, the smallest things can make a difference. And it is using different types of interfaces. It's using things like Figma instead of Photoshop. It's just making anything and everything that you can, and branching out your skill set will really help resonate. And especially if you're looking for a switch or just a different type of job change, it'll really help you out there.
All right, thanks. So who's next? What surprised you about human factors, or about your first job, or one of your transitions?
I'll jump in real quick. One thing that surprised me a lot, and actually, like, I might not have taken the job at Meta had I known it, but I'm glad that I didn't, is people have, like, I assume human factors has one of two meanings. It can either be really broad, or it might mean, some people lean slightly towards human factors as cognitive, where ergonomics is physical. And I was like, those were kind of my standard meanings. And so when I was interviewing at Meta, you know, people said, well, you know, how do you feel about doing human factors work? And I was like, great, that's my space. And so I was really all in on it. And then I started the job and people kept talking about human factors and they only meant the physical. So there was actually this like breakdown where to them human factors was only things related to comfort or fatigue or physical, like the physical side of it. And they really were breaking apart the cognitive side. And to them that was like completely unrelated and not included in that. And so I actually kind of had a challenge because I was like, wait a second, so you want me to only do the physical stuff, but also like, I want to do the cognitive side. I'm better equipped to do the cognitive side. And like, you're telling me that that's those two things, like, you don't consider them all under this same umbrella. And so that was a huge shock to me because I was just like, wow, like my degrees are in this and we have totally different definitions, but also that definition of it being like human factors as only physical, no cognitive, to me, at least, was really pervasive in the groups that I was in. So I couldn't use the language that I had learned to communicate in my new work environment, because if I said human factors, it only brought up ideas about one thing. And so I just really kind of struggled with, how do I communicate then what I do and what I want to do when we actually have different languages and the language that I'm using is not the same. And like, I think my language is right because again, my degrees are in it. But at the same time, more people had a different language. And so I kind of had to figure out how I was going to adapt. Did I really want to like be a stickler and say, your definition is wrong? Or did I want to figure out a way to kind of engage with people and change the way I communicated the work that I can do and want to do? And then I guess the other thing that surprised me is, so that's one thing, and it's kind of related, because the other thing that surprised me is I'd always heard in industry, they'll tell you what to do. And so they're going to define your direction. And I think there's some truth to that, where they said, we want you to work on comfort. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to have to work on comfort. And so that is a limitation of industry, but I didn't think about one of the big benefits. And I think it's kind of like a yin and yang, where your direction may be more set if you're working in industry, because you have to align with whatever that company needs. And then you're a little bit more limited. So you might have to choose your company based on the direction that you want. The flip side of it, though, is the definition of success is much more, I've felt it's much more open-ended, because coming from academia, it's like teaching, research, and service. And so you have these kind of three things and they're always the same, doesn't matter where you go. But switching into industry, it was like, okay, now I have less ambiguity about direction. Because in academia, you can go any direction as long as you can get funding. But again, you have to show progress through teaching, research, and service. And in industry, it was like, go this direction. And then I was like, okay, what do I do? And they were kind of like, you tell us. And that was shocking and very disorienting. So I actually really struggled with that, because I was like, everything that I have known to be success is useless now. And so that to me was like completely shocking. And I actually felt really, in thinking about the transition from a PhD student to faculty and from faculty to working at Meta, that was much more shocking than like working at Meta. Was much more shocking than going from a PhD student to faculty, because the value system of the work had changed and I didn't know what success looked like. And I had to really like wrestle with that. So that was kind of the second surprise. But that being said, I guess the third surprise is that I thought I would never be able to change my direction, but I luckily chose a company that does encourage professional development and growth. And one of the ways through that is you have some say in what you do. And so I've actually been able to shift my direction from doing comfort-related research to more like perception-related research in the same domain. And so I feel like I've had much more agency than I thought I would in that space. So those are, I guess, the three biggest surprises, which have turned out to be two for the better and one for the worse, but that one's okay. It's just vocabulary.
Yeah, I think finding the right company that allows you to grow and encourages you to grow is so important. And I did have that, you know, when I was at HP, we sort of thought of HF as the cognitive and ergo as the physical, but then there were other people in other companies that we worked with who thought of HF as physical and UX as the more cognitive experiential stuff. So, I mean, I definitely can see how that happens and how that's confusing. And the other thing you brought up about getting into a job and then all of a sudden you're the immediate expert, it is kind of disconcerting, because I do remember that starting and being in a room full of people and they're going to make a change to a product or a system and you're like, wait, what? Based on those 8 people I just like, you know, it can be intimidating to all of a sudden be the expert in the room, right? Okay, so did you guys, Na or Jingkun, did you have some surprises you wanted to share about any of your transitions or experiences?
I wouldn't say that I have met some big surprise, but there are something that are out of my expectation. So I know that because my advisor when I was in my PhD program, I'm also her first student. And I noticed that how busy she was writing the proposals, and some people they're saying that as a starting assistant professor, you may not have any time for like vacations. You may need to put lots of times on the research, teaching, and surveys. And when I started, I still feel that I have some freedoms. I'm not sure whether it's because of the COVID and that people are always at home. I feel that I still have the freedom to have my own work-life balance. Yeah, so this is, I think it's like, I mean that people are always saying like the job market is bad or the work is very challenging, but until you really do it, you will know that what it really means. And so it's not only for the workload, also for the job market. So because lots of my friends, they were on the job market when the COVID was just there. But I would say that in the end, almost all of us have launched a job they are interested in or they are happy with. So, and I know that these days there are lots of companies and institutes, they have lots of openings because some of them have the hiring freeze last year. So in that case, I would say that even though no matter how bad people describe the situations, but as long as you have the persistence, you stick with it, and I think the outcomes will always be very great. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Well, it sounds like you had some good ones then, some good surprises about work-life balance and finding a job in a difficult situation. Jingkun, did you have anything else to add, or go ahead?
I can share a small one, like only a small one. But what I want to say is like some of my mentor, actually Ocean is here, but she was my mentor actually. And like I feel like I didn't expect like our relationship can be that close, I should say. Like I was expecting the pure, professional life in the beginning, but later on I realized a mentor can also be a good friend. Like she's always there for you. So I would encourage like all the students probably to like, don't be afraid to share your life with them. Like the people, whoever cares about you, cares all of you, not only your professional work, but also your personal life. Yeah, that's a small thing I want to share.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And thanks for your comment in the chat, Missy, about setting your boundaries. It's so important. So we mentioned COVID. How has COVID affected your trajectories or the way you work?
Yeah, I can go first. So I actually went through that whole process of actually interviewing during COVID. So there isn't, no one flies you out places anymore, anything like that. So everything's very remote. So you have to make sure that you can, establish this, like, you're in the room. It's a person, like, this is your personality, and you have to kind of try and break down barriers left and right, however you can. I once had an interview. I didn't know these things, but like somehow he ended the call and then he called me back, and then I went to adjust my earphones and then I hung up the call. I didn't know you could hang that up. So we like did this phone tag in the middle of an interview. I'm trying to interview for a company, and it was just so embarrassing that at the end I like emailed him and I was like, so I appreciate you dealing with my struggle. And he's like, it's COVID, it's technology. And I feel like that's a big joke, especially in my company now, where you will have a pilot and you are all set, ready to go. You were doing a remote session, and then this just happened to me. And then the next day, my computer audio just decides it's not going to work. So it's just one of those things where you just have to keep going, and you have to be dynamic, and you have to be able to just pivot and go a different direction. You grab what you can and do things like that. And I think COVID has, I know, especially for me, given me this sense of nothing's stable really anymore. And so you have to be able to take out of your comfort zone of things that you know and things that have been stable, and be able to adjust and be able to go with it and run and take it. And that's especially in industry, and even in academia, sometimes it's not going to go the way you plan, and you're going to have to change your dissertation. You're going to have to change the way you think of things. You're going to have to go into your industry, and you're going to have to come up with a whole new plan. And especially when it comes to all these HF methods that we've dealt with in the past that have all been very physical, and now having to resonate that virtually has been a huge struggle, but it's also been a really great creative space for us as HF, as a team, as a whole. And so I think for COVID, I think it was kind of something that was a pretty awesome experience that we've all been able to do that, especially with UX research, using Zoom. Zoom has done a lot of great things since then. And being able to be creative and do different things and being adaptive, I feel like is a really awesome trait. And especially if you're still in school, that's something that you can talk about and resonate with, your resume and things that you're going forth, saying that I'm adaptable, watch me do it. I did COVID. So I think for me, that biggest change. And then when it came to work, it's, during everything that goes on, we were 100% remote. Now we're kind of going back. And I think the biggest issue with me was not having that personal, like being in a room with someone every single day, or even sharing an office with an individual. And so I think however you can break down that barrier of, doing remote, we did remote coffee sessions for HFE, or, even in work, just doing something fun. So wearing a funny shirt or putting on a funny hat just to make people laugh and just enjoy it, and know that it's not just work in a Zoom meeting. Sometimes you can laugh and talk about your day, because that could be the only person you're talking to all day. So making sure you kind of, you have that balance in that life, I think was the best thing for me in COVID, and especially with work in my company.
Yeah. Okay. Jingkun, how has that affected you? How has COVID affected you in school?
Actually, I think it affects a lot. I think they did online, like Zoom meeting all the time. And I think, like, just the format changes, I guess. Like, I personally prefer the in-class format. So I think after changing to online, there are like so many distractions on my side. Like, I just can't focus, basically. So I guess that's some impact on my side.
Okay. Let's see, how has COVID affected you?
So I think obviously it affected my job search, the whole procedure. So I didn't do any in-person on-site. So all the interviews are Zoom meetings, and all the talks are Zoom meetings. And yeah, so I think this is like, I'm not sure whether it's good or bad. So the good thing is I do not need to fly to these locations, and I can schedule the interviews back to back. But the bad things, I lost the opportunity to visit these universities. Yeah, so I interviewed globally So I think if it's not because of the COVID, I should have the opportunity to travel all over the world, right? And yeah, so for the job seeking process, I think the COVID at the beginning, because lots of universities they are in the hiring freeze. And I think that even until October last year, there are still very few openings. And that did make me a little bit nervous at the beginning. Yeah. And then I feel that I will still do the job search at this round. So I just insist and then I think even in January there are some posting out. Yeah, so overall I don't think the COVID influenced my whole job search very much. I think all the things are on the track, and I'm also very happy that I can find this position, and I think the results, I'm pretty happy and I feel very lucky, even though the COVID influenced lots of hiring process. Yeah. And for the research side, I think lots of us, we changed or we rethink about the methods we are conducting these days. And I believe that the human subjects experiment, so the in-person studies, because I also do some wearable sensors, the human-centered computing. So I still collect the in-person human subject experiment data. So I think I will still focus on this, but meanwhile, because we have difficulty to in finding the participants, so we may need to switch our direction a little bit, so maybe focus on some online studies using the online data to answer the research questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Missy, how about you?
Yeah, so I was still a professor when COVID started, and so I got to partake in that mid-semester pivot to online teaching. But I luckily, because I guess I'm just a very practical person. I didn't want to teach 2 night classes, and for different reasons, like specific to the department, I was going to teach 2 classes, but they both were going to be at night. And I was like, I can't do that. I'll go crazy. I'll either work from like 5 to 9, 2 nights a week, and my bedtime is 9 and I had a 30-minute commute, so that wasn't going to work. Or I could work from 5 to 7, 4 nights a week and never see my partner, and also hate everything, because that would be in the winter in Michigan where there would be no sun. And so I was like, okay. So at the beginning of the semester, I had actually switched one of the classes to being online because I didn't want to do 2 night classes. And so luckily I'd already done that. And I'd also invested some time in figuring out how to do online courses, just because that was something that I thought there might be some value in knowing. So that paid off. And so I only had to pivot 1 class, and luckily it was the smaller class, but also it was my fun class, and it was the one that I really wanted to teach. And so that was just kind of a huge change, because I had, course projects, and I had to basically say, what you did is good enough, because at that time we didn't have any access. So it was like we left and we couldn't go back. Not that we didn't want to, which we wouldn't have wanted to anyways, but we really couldn't access anything. So so I had to pivot, how I was grading the class and what was valued and kind of the work that they did. And so that also shifted then, some of my thoughts about research, but also at the same time I was interviewing for jobs. So I got to do the online interviews as well, with some different industry positions, and actually maybe some academic ones too. But anyways, I guess I think kind of paralleling what Na was saying, once I got my new job and once I started my new job, it did really shift the way that I framed my research. So so there's like all the things that changed from teaching, but I do think are really great resources about how to be an engaging teacher online. And so I do think there's some resources there to kind of help with that type of transition. But your research, it's like you have specific methods and you do certain things. And so starting a new job, trying to understand what success was, I had to basically say, okay, if I don't know if I'll ever, in the next year be around people in the lab, how do I still be successful? And so I really pivoted strongly towards all of my data is now survey based. And so we were lucky in that we had additional resources. So I could actually ship devices to people. And that's something that like I couldn't have done in academia because there is no value from doing that. It is just pure overhead and it's expensive. And so that's one of those things like I really appreciated about my industry position then, because I did have that resource. And I've thought a lot about like, wow, if I was trying to do that in academia, I couldn't, because I couldn't spend the money to ship devices out and make sure that it was safe and make sure that everyone was separated and it was in, no contact delivery. But then I just pivoted all my research to be survey based. And so it was like, I have to be realistic about what I can do. And I want to plan things and I have ideas, but if I can't do them, like I can't spend that time now on it. So, I guess the other impact was just really in how I thought about my research and structured it moving forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, so any final thoughts or recommendations or advice you want to give to people about either going into academia, industry, making that decision?
I have kind of open-ended advice. If you are dreading whatever it is that you are doing or about to do, it's the wrong thing. And it's okay to realize that, and it's okay for that to change. But I've had many different times, and sometimes it was due to the work, and sometimes it was due to the people, where I would just dread Mondays and I would dread what I did, or I would dread, knowing that I had something coming up. And that's a good signal, and you should listen to that signal. And it doesn't mean that you have to quit your job today, because that's scary and terrifying, and you need to have a plan. But if you're dreading what's coming up, then really think about if you have other options, or if is it something that's going to pass? Is it a preliminary exam or, a big presentation? Okay, that makes sense. But is it constant and, just every Monday or every, I don't know. But just remember, you have options.
That's such a good point, because I think a lot of times we know that maybe we're not in the right place, but change is really scary. So it's hard to push yourself to, get out the door and try something new, right? Okay, let's see. Sibbie, do you have any final words of wisdom, advice, recommendations?
Come up with something. No. So when I was as an undergrad, going into graduate school, you have that decision. Are you going to go into your master's, or are you going to go into your PhD? And I was given both opportunities. I was thankful enough to get both. And it became that really hard decision of, what do you want to do? PhD is usually that academia route. And then master's, you go and you get into your industry. And I was having a very difficult time with that decision, because no one can make that decision except for you. And there's lots of things to consider, right? You have, we've all resonated, where you want to live, what type of work, your pay, all these things, and they all just start bubbling. And when you're so young and you're in the field and you don't know what to do, and you're just like, I don't know what any of this is. I can barely afford food right now. What do I do? I would encourage you just to seek help with anybody. That could be your professor. Your professor could tell you, I was thankful enough when I was actually going through the interview process, I just broke it down to actually my advisor that is now, but I just broke it down to him and I was like, listen, I also have another option on the table, and I just need help. And we spent practically the majority of my interview basing off of what you can do with each. And so that's what I would encourage you, if you are still debating on, even if you want to do industry or academia, master's, PhD, anything like that, or even if you're on that track and you still don't know what you want to do, talking to individuals, reaching out to people in HFES that can help you. There's so many individuals who have done both, have done one route, and can also tell you stories about other individuals, because we're this huge network. And just really, I think that's the best thing you can do. And then just taking everybody's, 2 cents of what they did, what they thought was the best. And then, at the end of the day, making your own decision. And being confident with that decision, knowing that's it's what you want. You're listening to your gut, you're listening to your heart, and then it might change a little bit down the road, but like we said, you can always adjust.
Okay. Jingkun, do you have any final words?
Yeah, I also kind of like Sibbie. Oh, sorry, I don't know whether I pronounce that correctly or not, but hopefully yes. So sorry if I not. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so what I also kind of want to say is interest is really important. What I would suggest, like for the students to do is find your interest, and like even if you don't know what your interest is, after trying them, you'll know what you don't like. So just like say no to them. It's also important. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah, I would say that plan ahead. So this, I think what Jingkun said is also very meaningful. Like unless you experience, then you know what you like or what you dislike. And sometimes if you spend too much time on thinking or making a decision, it's useless. Maybe you just go for it and experience it, and then you may know whether you like it or not. And the second thing is, like I said, plan ahead. I think because I'm a person who makes the schedules or makes the plans before I do it. So for example, if you want to go apply for an internship, so you may need to prepare your curriculum, you need to take the necessary course, you need to prepare your resume, as the Sibbie said. You need to have related projects that can strengthen your skill set. And you may need to prepare your business card, your elevator pitch, and network during the conference. And lots of internship, the application may start in the late fall, like November, December, or October, even October for next summer. So you need to plan ahead, prepare all the skill set, and then apply for it. And another thing is like persistence. So because when I ask those senior faculties, how can I get my proposal funded, they said the only word is persistence. You just keep writing high quality proposals, and in one day you will get the grant funded. So I will say the same. As long as you keep doing it and insist on what you like, and finally you will get what you want. Yeah.
thank you. Okay, I'd like to, I guess I don't have any more questions, so I think we can wrap up, and I'd like to say hooray to, thank you very much to our panelists, and I really enjoyed the panel, and I hope that everyone was able to walk away with some great nugget of information or some good piece of advice to help them out on their transitions as well. And there's a little clapping hands for us, or for you guys, I should say. Okay, so this has been a panel from HFE Woman. If you don't know about us, you can find us on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We'd love to have you join us, and I've noticed there's some interest in the coffee chats, so we may be starting those up again, maybe once a month instead of once a week. And I really appreciate everybody's attendance today. And once again, thank you, panelists. Okay.